to other volunteers.
Okay, I worked for the school district for 9 years. I started from the ground up as summer help, and I worked my way up to district head custodian to middle school before they changed their administration, and then I was gone. So, okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, if there's someone who spoke last time who wants to speak again, now it would be your turn.
Suzanne Feaster, Bristol. I'm not good at this, but one, it saddens me that the budget always outweighs the education of the students, though this appears to be the reality of the situation. My other thought is, before moving and uprooting students and teachers into other schools, why not have an improvement plan in place for the middle school, and once the improvements have been made, then discuss what model is the best model for the education of our students. My son's in 8th grade at the middle school. Someone said their grade's lower. He's had nothing but a positive experience there. He gets A's and B's, and I believe it's a combination of the parent, the teacher, and the student support that will help give them the good or bad experience that they have in their educational life as a child. That's all.
Thanks. Okay. I think, looks like it's back to us. There's one more.
Hi, I'm John Sellers. I think you all got an email from me, and I got a reply for, I think, 2 of you. I thank you for that. So you all know what I sent you as far as an email, but as far as school goes, my wife and I, and what we've seen so far, K through 8 does not work, so first of all. 7 through 12 probably would not work either. Like the other people are saying, they need that time to develop, that middle school, junior high school, whatever you want to call it. It sounds like the middle school is sick, not necessarily broken, but sick. It sounds like we have a guy that knows about a pump that we might not have been aware of before that could help out. But it seems like it might need a little modernization, and it sounds like what Demon Vince was saying, you know, downsizing. When when less is more, so if you took and you added a wing, if you spent the money to add a wing to the middle school for K through 6, K through 5, whatever you want to call it, at that point there, you have 2 or 3 other schools that you can close down, sell the buildings, use the money for something else. Now you're only maintaining 3 less buildings, actually, and modernizing the middle school. So it just kind of keep that in mind. And we did give you ideas for rerouting the bus routes and stuff like that, and you could definitely save a couple $100,000 a year. Now, I don't know who has the authority there, but you should really, really look into it. Because right now, you're doing double the runs. You're doing the routes almost twice. And my wife knows, she drives part-time for the bus company, so she knows because she's done it. And that's just a waste of our money. So just try to find ways. It's up to you guys to do it. And Dawn, I hope to see you tomorrow.
Evening. I promised my wife I wouldn't speak when I came here, but I'm going to break that promise. I've been a New Hampton resident all of about...
Sorry, we need your name.
Stephen Geyer, New Hampton. I've been a New Hampton resident for about 22 days. I have lived in New Hampshire my whole life, and I just retired after 34 years in education as a high school principal. And I converted my summer home into a year-round home, and I'm living in New Hampton now. I'm interested to look at what's going on. I am very sympathetic, and I hear the board looking at what you're talking about is probably very difficult to sustain in terms of the number. We're all losing enrollments pretty much across the state. But I would suggest a cautious approach. I would suggest that having been in this business for a long time, I spent the last 23 years as a principal, and I served 3 places in my career. I started in Franklin, and then I went to the Governor Wentworth School District. So I went from one of the poorest school districts to one of the richest school districts. And it isn't just all about money. Money certainly helps, but it's a people business. And so whatever configuration you look at, No one ever inspired, and not one building ever inspired a person. It's usually a teacher, it's usually a staff. And so if you're looking to close down staff and to consolidate that way, I think you just have to go slow and be realistic. And 7 through 12, I don't know of anybody that's going to a 7-12 model. Yeah, if you have a 7-12 model, you're probably staying with it. But the concept of 7-12, 7th and 8th graders constantly get the short shrift. I've worked in those types of schools, even if you segregate a building. I think you have to take a measured look. You have from what I can know of, a very, very capable superintendent. You've hired her. I think you ought to let her do her job and try to straighten out what's going on in the district. Give her a while to take a look at it, have a committee, have a facilities committee, bring people in from the towns, selectmen from the towns, citizens from the towns, and take a look comprehensively, but move very slowly, and look everywhere you can to save money, beyond just closing schools. I think that's a very bad model. To tell people you're going to close a school or to look at closing this school or doing that. It's very difficult. The last point I'll make is I've heard a couple comments regarding the middle school and test scores. As I analyze your test scores at your middle school, it's very difficult when you start to take a look at the old kneecaps and go on. But let me just give you the example of what your middle school scores look like. It would be, for example, if you took your regular kids, and I never mean to point out special ed or whatever, but I've had the same situation at Governor Wentworth. If you take a look at your test scores, it would be similar to this. If the Red Sox had won the pennant this year, but their Japanese pitcher had done poorly, that's what your test scores are. The team's doing well, the pitcher's not.
Yeah. Hi, oops. Sorry, I beat you. No, just kidding. You want to go first?
No.
All right, I'm Stephanie Bednes. I'm from Bridgewater. So when I think of the situation we are in, I think of the why, and it took me several years, it took me 6 years of going through this to kind of evolve from being really mad at the school board and then realizing maybe that wasn't the issue and being really mad at the superintendent and then being really mad at the community, and then I realized it's really everybody's fault. And I think as long as we keep blaming everybody else, we're never going to fix a problem. And I do think we have a problem because when you have, teachers who are unhappy and not getting contracts signed, and buildings that are in need of repair, and taxpayers who feel overburdened, you have a problem. So I do like the idea of kind of somehow trying to appease everyone. I think we all need to remember the why. The why is that we can do better. We have some good things going, but I really think we can do better. We can fix our schools. We can pay our teachers a little bit better. The question is the how. How do we do that? Well, something's got to give. So we all have to be willing to give something. So where can we kind of merge? Closing school, that's very negative, but you can merge, and sometimes through merging, you become stronger. If we merge, teachers are going to have more of a chance of collaborating. You're going to be able to, dig deeper and analyze kids' test scores, and now that the whole world's moving away from test scores into performance assessment, that's going to give kids the time to really, really dig deep and for teachers to collaborate in order to reach these new standards, which are actually much better than what we've been doing in public education. It's actually moving in a really good direction for once. And I love Newfound too, but I think the Newfound School District could be much better. I don't look at it and go, yay, I'm in Newfound, this is fabulous. I'm like, yeah, I go to Newfound. Yeah, I don't want to feel that way. I want to feel, let's make this an awesome district that everyone's very proud of. Let's stop, holding our own turf and defending it fiercely, and just start mushing things together in a educationally appropriate way that's best for kids. And I really was an advocate of the K through 8 because it's a merger that really works. It can be very successful. If we can't do that, there's wiggle room to that. You could do the K through 6, try that K through 7, maybe 8. We do have to work within our own restrictions. But I really think we need to start working together, and we have some good potential, but we've got to focus on the why.
Hi, Bob Brooks, Hebron. Are we trying to save the school buildings or the school system itself, school district itself? I think we should keep the middle school the way it is, because repairing that building should be a lot less costly than building an extension or whatever would happen up here at the high school, since I think 6, 7, 8 is a lot better idea than 7 through 12. And if you want to have the students leave the middle school and go somewhere else because the building is unsafe or uninhabitable, then why would the SAU people be interested in moving over there?
They're not. Okay, now back to us.
I have the 2002 study right here. What went
Name
through
it, name
Steve
and
Favorite
town.
Bristol, and at the end is the actual cost that the superintendent mentioned about where it was going to almost $9 million. When I looked at this, I said to myself, well, it is $9,492,660, less the state building aid of $5 million. Did you incorporate that originally or see that?
Pulled out the actual warrant article.
Okay. The warrant articles are fine. You can put all you want on a piece of paper, but you've got to sell it. The biggest problem with trying to sell something like this, it has to be done professionally and understood in an 8th grade level. That's sales in the educational world. Profile School went through this with a building that literally was shifting when the wind blew. And God's honest truth, when Page and Bonnet went up to do the construction, it was very easy to tear that building down. So we've got a pretty solid building. We just need to cosmetic and a few things. And a pump system to be looked at? Come on. These are very simple things to address. And I did happen to meet the man who originally quoted the air quality control system. I met him in New York City at breakfast one day, and I thought, how would this happen with somebody from New Hampshire being in New York City at the same time we're discussing the situation of what the air handling really did. Other than that, that's the study. It's got to be sold to the general public, not spoon-fed quietly.
Susan Colby, Bristol. I have heard a lot about the test scores at the middle school, and I would just like to say it's not just academics that go on at the middle school. We have these kids, we have all of these small elementary schools. You go to school for so many years with the same small group, you know, the same few kids in your class, one teacher every year, and then you step up to the middle school where all of these towns combine, all of these new changes. There's new teachers, different classes, you know, for each subject. There's the athletics get, you know, more intense. There's the extracurricular activities. There's a lot more that goes on than just the academics. And I would prefer, I am absolutely in favor of keeping the middle school. I clapped for Archie Oja the first time ever at the last meeting when he agreed. He said, been there, done that, you know, this is what we decided was best. And I would prefer, if test scores are gonna drop, that they happen in middle school, not when these kids, you know, get into high school and are faced with all these new changes. So definitely in favor of keeping the middle school.
Okay. All right, now back to us, I think. Okay, so we're going to end the public input time and move back to action items by the board, if the board chooses. First, if the board have any comment, I'll take those too. Go ahead. Can you pass that to Don?
A few things. The first thing is there is no state building aid anymore. It's been put off indefinitely. We're also going to lose adequacy numbers, the adequacy aid, the money, the funding formula dictates that that's inevitable. Everybody wants K-6, we're going to withdraw from the district. Well, that means the end of the middle school. There's no way to avoid that. If we go K-6, we get rid of the middle school. A lot of people had comments about the school board and not doing our job. We're here, we're doing a difficult job, which is to represent the voters and the taxpayers and to protect and educate our students. The only way we can represent is if we get input. And since nobody's beating my door down to come tell me what they think, and nobody's sending me email, the only thing we can do is we can have forums like this and ask, what do you want? What do you think? Some people commented they're sick about hearing about the money. Yeah, I'm sick of talking about the money. The fact of the matter is that without money, we can't make anything happen. Whether it's saving money, whether it's finding new sources of money, educating children costs money. To criticize us for talking about it is not right. It's what we have to do, and we want your input. Gentleman up here talked about a pump that I'd never heard of. Unfortunately, regimes change. People come, people go, the school board changes, the administration changes, the maintenance department at the school changes. I'd like to find out that there's a pump somewhere not working and the simple fix is to replace it. We'd never know that if somebody didn't bring it up. Another thing people have talked about tonight was kids going to the middle and the high school, and the test scores and everything are terrible there. And that perhaps holding them in the elementary school one more year is going to make a difference. All of the kids in the middle school and all of the kids in the high school came from the elementary schools. They didn't change their intellectual ability. And holding them there at an elementary school one more year is not going to change the results at the middle school and the high school. What needs to happen is effort needs to be made at the middle school and at the high school to improve education. We can't do that if we're constantly chasing demands that we go K-6, constantly chasing demands that we change what we're doing at one school or another. We need to work together. I don't want to see the district split up. If it happens, it's not good for anybody. It's certainly not good for the kids. The loss of programming, the ability to offer things will diminish. It's not good for the staff. If we start busting up the school district, teachers will lose their jobs. They don't go with the school building. Teachers stay with the district that hired them. And in order to split up the district, those teachers are all going to come back, and then we'll have to decide who's going to stay and who's going to go, because we won't need that many teachers. Now granted, we start letting teachers go, they can go to the schools and the towns that have split off, but what does that mean to a person who's spent years in a school district? What does that mean to their benefit package? What does that mean to their wages? They'll have to renegotiate with the new districts, with the new schools. That can't be good. I don't even want to think about it. I think we need to concentrate on fixing what's broke instead of breaking things worse. Thank you.
The gentleman with the 2002 study, could we get a copy, seeing how we don't seem to have one in the district? I'd like to see that for our meeting tomorrow.
You want to speak? Yes.
So I'm going to try to keep this to kind of a broad conversation, but also to let people know kind of what has been happening, because I think it is important. I have been here for 1 school year. I have probably tackled more than the average superintendent tackles in a year. I take my job seriously. I knew the middle school had issues. I was told that when I came in. So I have looked at those issues. The administration has been given clear directives on where we're going. There's goals set. We have started by creating an intervention block at the middle school so that we can start to look at those students who are not performing and how can we give them direct support to improve. On the flip side of that is also providing opportunities for students who are at or above grade level for enrichment and to grow even further, because my job is not to just look at the low kids, but look at everybody. How do we push those kids? That started this year. It's a work in progress. We'll continue to work on that. We're in the process of implementing PBIS, Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports, at both the middle school and Bristol Elementary School. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a school-wide behavior process where you really teach students and you give them lessons on how to behave. And so what does good hallway behavior look like? And so we really are focused on that. We have a great team who's been working on that. We have had 1 day of training. Unfortunately, we had a day canceled in the summer, so we're not quite ready to implement, but we're looking at a January implementation date where we're going to start that. We have looked at, one of the things I heard was drugs. There's a big drug problem at the middle school. I can assure you there is not a big drug problem at the middle school. We had 2 incidences last year. Drugs in this community are a community problem, not a middle school problem. I can walk through the parking lot at Bristol Elementary School. We found a bag of heroin in the parking lot. This is a community problem, not a school problem. We are part of the resolution to help solve that problem in the sense of teaching our students. But the middle school is not a problem. I think the board has a huge task at hand. I think it's important that the board reflect and not make decisions that you're rushing into. I came into this district, we don't have any plans. We have no strategic plan. We have no long-term plan. We need to create those. We need to build those. We need to make decisions on a plan, not just to make decisions. Because when you make those decisions, there's consequences that go along with that, probably many unintended that you didn't think out. To make this change next year would be absurd at some level. Because we're in budget process right now. My goal is not to cut 30 teachers, not to cut 19 paras, but to look as we attrition. We had teachers leave last year, and we looked and analyzed those positions and said some of them we needed to fill, some of them we didn't need to fill. That's how you do things strategically, is you have to analyze and look at those. So I'd ask the board to look at them. I would also finalize that the board wanted public input. You've had 2 meetings now, and overwhelmingly, the public has said, improve our schools, improve our education, don't change the structure. And that has been, I think, the public input pretty much. Have there been other people who have talked about other things, but I think the majority of people have said, let's continue to work on education. And that's what I would like to do, is to focus on how to improve our schools, not how to keep Bridgewater Hebron here, how to keep Groton from joining them, how to change the structure of schools, how can we improve education? And so I just ask the board to think strategically about this. and not rush into something just because. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll speak. All right, I agree with I think it was Mr. Guyette. I think we've hired a very, very good superintendent, and we need to let her continue to do her job. She's done a lot of things for us in this year. I think we need to let our facilities committee work. That's been set up. Let's let them do the job. I don't know that we can afford to make any major changes right now. I think we need to fix what we have, though. We have to fix what we have. Love to hear about the pump. Yeah, but, so I'm not prepared to make any decisions to close any schools tonight.
Does anyone else have comment?
I guess a question procedurally. I mean, maybe I don't have a question. No, I don't. Not at the moment. I may change my mind very quickly, though.
I will say that my motion was to have discussion about making a motion to close the middle school. I will not be making a motion to close the middle school.
Now, do you have a question? I will just say, I'm just going to restate a little of what I said last time. Our policy about building closure says that building has to be significantly below capacity for 2 years, but there's no specific criteria for what significantly below means. And Stacy has only had a year to get things going, and I just have to say, I think she's done a remarkable job because she's been buried in cleaning up messes for this year. So it's amazing that we're doing anything besides cleaning up messes. And there's a lot of political uncertainty right now, so it's very difficult for us to make a decision about where we're going until we know who's going with us.
Well, I guess I'm prepared to make a motion because well, I guess I'll make the motion and see if it's seconded and move from there. But I guess for lack of a better understanding of how to word it, I'd like to make the motion that the Newfound Area School District transitions to delivering their elementary school education in a K through 6 model.
Okay, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay, no discussion.
Thank you. I realize that it's probably not popular to change, but I still am thoroughly convinced that some change needs to happen. And the reason that I make this motion, and I certainly would probably be the first to ask it to be tabled, but is the fact that we need a motion that focuses the direction. And I think in focusing the direction of this discussion, it's going to allow us to come up with what the numbers are, what those problems are. Now, this doesn't really talk about problems at a facility. That was just the example that I thought about. But it's very difficult to look at all the options and to come up with a set of answers that says, can we go K through 6? Do we have the space to do it? If we did this in the next school year, what would have to happen? How would we have to change the schools? What would be needed as far as staff and any budgetary additions or cuts? And I think those are answers that we need to have. I find it very frustrating, just like the issue with the technology tonight, and I realize there may have been other extenuating circumstances, but I find it very frustrating that I can find obituaries from 1894 on the internet, but I cannot find some of this information, whether it be on our school site or some of the other town sites. But that we can, have a public comment that introduces a document that probably was relatively easy to find. So I think this is a good motion to focus us. I personally, I said it at the beginning, I think that's the model that this district needs to go to. So I fully support it. I'm not just looking for ideas. But I think it's a good way to focus our direction and say, can we do it now? What is it going to look like, both cost and infrastructure-wise? So really all I got for the moment.
Okay, and I had said at the last meeting that I supported K through 6. So my question for you is, do you have any kind of timeline? Are you thinking we just make the motion and we turn it over to Stacy? Because it's kind of a wide open motion right now, so I'm wondering. Transition, and when you say transition, do you mean all the schools at once, or who can go online first goes online? Because I have to say, I agree with Stacy in that all the schools should be in the same place at the same time for curriculum reasons. Yeah, go ahead, try. I don't know.
January 1st, no. I went to a school that we transitioned from a school to a different school in 3rd grade in January. So that's a real pain in the butt. It was for us, but I think some of me wanted to say to make the motion for the 15-16 school year. I really think that has to be part of that discussion with how it can look moving forward, I guess would be my answer to that. I think the difficulty in wording that motion is because we're not in a, I know, everybody knows we're not in a position to put K through 6 at New Hampton Community School right now. And so I guess, I don't know where we stand as far as the flexibility and how to do it, but I would rather just see a full-on implementation of K through 6. I guess ideally you would see Bridgewater Hebron Village School go K through 6, or pre-K through 6 if it supports it. You would see Danbury Elementary School go K through 6, Bristol Elementary K through 6. New Hampton Community School probably has to remain K through 5 with the 6th graders going to Bristol Elementary School, but I think again that's kind of answers to be found.
I know Stacy's had that conversation with her administration about how that could happen, so I just wanted to know if you had a time in mind, or if the motion really is for her to set up a plan and get it done. So that's what I was asking. I don't know if you want to say anything about that. Yeah, okay.
So again, I would ask for time, because to do anything, you want time to do it well and make sure you're making the right decisions. To move 6th grade, Danbury, we would move 6th grade into, there's a little center space that is kind of used like a library of some sort. Everybody would go to carts, meaning art, music. They would all be on a cart because I think they use that space. That's also the alternative space they use for our 2 combination classrooms. So when 4 and 5 are broken out for like ELA or math, that's the space they use. So it would restrict Danbury significantly on space. They would be at capacity. My other concern right now is we also have in Danbury a K1 combination classroom of, I believe, 23 or 24 students. I don't want to start making up numbers, but up there, and our 4-5 classroom is at 24. So those are pretty large classrooms to do a combination class. When we, I was just looking for the enrollment numbers, I think they're up 16 kids or so. I'm sorry? Oh, I am, okay, thank you. So it would move all of your unified arts back on carts, and it would take up pretty much every space. Again, my concern is, what combination classrooms do we put together next year? What if we do need to separate 4 and 5 out because of numbers? We just are out of space there. New Hampton, is out of space. You can't put them, you have at least a classroom of students. So Bristol can't house those. If you move 6th grade there, you'd need at least 2 classrooms for Bristol. One of the things we are proposing for next year, and again, all these things will come through the budget process, but is we need to add an additional preschool program because we are out of compliance with the law in preschool. At this point in time, we're proposing an additional program at Bristol for that, which would then again take up another classroom. So you would probably at some point need space at Bristol. I'm guessing you could hold the students there, but not New Hampton students as well. Bridgewater Hebron could potentially have 1 classroom. We lost a 1st grade teacher last year because of class sizes, so you could put a single 6th grade classroom. Right now we have, your 5th grade is 2 classes. So your 5th grade, again, as numbers change throughout the years, that could be, but for next year you currently have 2 5th grades, so you would need 2 classrooms in that building. You would also want to consider, obviously, staffing. Who are those? What middle school teachers would move down to the elementary school, what teachers are certified elementary ed. We would want to make sure, because right now at the middle school, they're teaching content-specific areas. So we would be asking people to now teach, as opposed to just math, teach ELA, math, science, and social studies, which requires a skill level. And so we would, if we move teachers there, we would need to make sure we provided them training. We would be moving everyday math probably, because we would want to be continuity through the elementary school, which would mean curriculum materials, library material. I mean, there's expenses that go with just moving 6th grade to the elementary school. So it is a lot more than just physically moving bodies. And it takes a lot of planning and preparation to make sure we're doing it correctly. As I've said before, any combination will work. We can make it work. It's just making sure that we're planning it and doing it the right way.
2 questions come to mind. How many more teachers will we need to go with a K-6 model, and what would you do with the middle school?
How many more teachers? I don't think you need more teachers, because you would just move middle school teachers to the elementary school.
Do we have enough middle school teachers to move it?
It would be your 6th grade teachers.
Okay.
You have 4 of them. And then what was your second question?
Then what would happen at the middle school?
You would have 7 and 8. We'd have to look at that. I don't have an answer to that.
What numbers-wise, where are we at the middle school with just 7th and 8th? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I don't. So you would just under 200 students. You would have. Could we currently? Well, if you looked at next year's numbers, you have 95 in 6th grade and 89 in 7th grade.
So that would put our cost per student in that building at 20-something thousand?
Well, remember, you'd also have lots of shifting that would happen. So with 200 students, there's be lots of changes. You don't need a guidance counselor and a half. You don't need an administrator and a half. You know what I mean? So you would look at you'd have to rethink all of those positions. But you'd also, on the same time, have to look and say, okay, now you have K-6 in 2 elementary schools. Can one principal cover 2 elementary schools of K-6? You start adding volume to those buildings, and 6th graders, anybody who has a middle school child knows they're sometimes a little difficult. And so, as they start to spread their wings, there's more problems that happen. And so, you would have to just rethink the whole concept. So to give you a number of costs, I don't have that. I have not mapped that out.
What is the Little Red Schoolhouse used for at New Hampton?
That is, I think it's OT and music.
OT, music, art, ICT, music, art,
So is that a potential space for a classroom, like Danbury with carts, or is that not?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a classroom before.
Okay.
It would, again, we put everything back on a cart, and everything, because our library is now, ICT is now on a cart, so we would put everything back on a cart.
Yeah. Okay.
As I said earlier, the facilities committee, you know, I want to be open about this. I don't want to have a commitment that we're going to do K through 6. I want to be able to look at the cost of K through 6 versus, you know, other potential costs of possibly closing the Bristol Elementary School and building a wing on the middle school, as well as the renovations that could be identified with the middle school versus the adding 7 and 8 to the high school costs and all the additional space that would be needed here for science labs and gyms and other extracurricular types of activities.
Well, Ben's motion does focus that, like he said, at least it gives direction, so.
There is a specific time.
Right. Well, no, he hasn't added a specific time. Yeah, and I think that a lot of people wonder if we ever make decisions. So.
In regards to time, I think the conversation has started with our 5th graders in regards to prepping them to go to 6th grade, and I think a lot of them are looking forward to that. So I'm not against looking into it. I just want to make sure we slow down just a little bit and maybe give these 5th graders a chance to move over there. Just a thought.
You mean this year's 5th graders are getting excited about middle school, right? Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, I think it happened to my kid because he was in 4-5. Now that he's in 5th, he knows what middle school's about, yeah. From last year's visit to the other class, yeah.
I guess procedurally, however we can or want to do this, I guess I'd really like to make the motion to be that the transition happen for the 16-17 school year. I think what I've heard is that's probably the maybe the best way to handle the not best solution.
So procedurally, then I'm going to ask: Are you? Do you want to revise your motion? And if so, then we ask Vincent Paul if he accepts a friendly amendment. So are you amending your?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and state it now.
Implement for the 16-17 school year.
Okay, so it would now be that you move that Newfound Area School District transition to a K through 6 model for the 2016-17 school year.
Yes.
Okay, and did you accept that? Yes. Okay, and so that amendment has been accepted. Okay, is there any other discussion? Yes.
Can I clarify? Is that a done deal? I just want to make sure the board is clear. Are you saying that we will move to it in 2016-17, or we will look to see what it costs and what that actually looks like to implement in 2016-17? Thank you.
Will, the motion is to move to it.
Can you elaborate on the benefits of having the kids into the elementary school like sardines? What are the benefits to that? Could you just elaborate on your motion, please?
I'm sorry, the public input is over, so this is our discussion time. So he won't be answering.
This wasn't
Do you wish to answer?
I'll take I guess here.
Let me just clarify.
There were two parts to the original motion made by Jeff. One was to study going K through 6, and the other was to close the middle school. We're discussing the first part of that.
Here's what I'm looking to do, and in other discussions or just discussions with individuals as we moved into the election process, a lot of people have said, just as they've said tonight, we continue to talk and we continue to talk, and Ruby just said it, that we continue to, as a board, not really do anything. I'm a firm believer that, and I've seen it working for the town of Bristol, that you talk a lot, and then eventually, most recently in this room, something gets put on the table, and if it's approved, we move forward with it. But when it's that official, it doesn't get approved, that's when you stop talking about it. And so I guess the reason I make the motion is because I do believe that that is the direction that we need to head. I guess, again, I will say it, I'm not opposed to somebody tabling this for further information, but I just really, that's at the end of the day where I'm at. I think this is the direction to go. I think that allots us the time to do it appropriately. And so that's what I'd like to say.
Just in support of the idea to extend this to the 16-17 year, I would add that that would give our superintendent adequate planning time to do this, to take a look at it, and also that given the trends, we will have fewer students to worry about 2 years from now. So with that in mind, I think that the problem could become a little bit simpler if we agree to do it for the 16-17 school year. Based on trends, that's what things are pointing us to.
Okay. Are there any other comments by board members? Yeah. Okay, Jeff?
Just so I'm clear, Stacy is a highly educated professional and an expert in what you're doing and working and running schools. Do you think it makes sense for us to go K-6?
I like my job. I think it makes sense to explore it and to be informed about what that actually looks like at the end of the day. I would agree with the audience about smushing kids into the elementary school. When I did the study last year and researched the history, one of the positives of having reductions was that we actually found space in the elementary schools, that 15 years ago, our schools were packed. We had art on a cart, music on a cart. There was no libraries. What I don't want to get into, and I reviewed the enrollment numbers at our last meeting, is we fluctuate significantly. We're not talking 1 or 2 students different in a building. We're talking 17 and 19 students. So what happens if Danbury, who's increased by 16 students this year, what if next year they increase by 10? Now we're packed. And so what I don't want to do is create a situation where we're now overfilled at the elementary schools and we're creating 7 to 8 at the middle school. I don't know what that really looks like at the end. I don't know if that is your first step to closing the middle school again. If we move, you know, I don't know if that, you know, if, I don't want to read into anything, but is that the intent? Is it that, I don't know, could the SAU move over there? Potentially, if only 7th and 8th grade were there. I will tell you, it will cost a lot of money to convert that to be able to manage office space at the middle school. I would love to be out of the SAU. If anybody's seen my office, it's a little triangle. It's the oddest space. We're tight in that building itself. But I think the board would behoove itself to look at the data, to look at what that actually looks like to make that happen. What could the potential cost be? What do we need space at before you commit to going there? Because I think you're making a decision without the facts.
I just want to say that, like I've said all along, I support K through 6, but my concern about K through 6 and the facilities we have is that we need to put some money into our facilities again. Because when you pull a student out for special ed instruction, they'll be sitting in the cafeteria. Sometimes they already are. And for a child that has any kind of sensory issues, that's a disaster. So I love the idea, just like I said last time, I like the idea of 7 through 12 too, but we have to have money for it, and we have to get support for it. And so we have to be salesmen if that's the direction we're going to go in. Okay. We're going to have to go through the
Yes, I love the idea of the K to 6 separate too, but I really like the idea of seeing how we could do it. Not reasons for not doing it, but how could we do it and what would it cost? That's what I'd like to know before I made a decision for that.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, and we have a suggestion that anybody can table it, except we can't. So I'm going to have to call for a vote on the motion unless there's any other comment.
Can you repeat the motion, please?
Yeah, so the motion is, Ben moves that Newfound Area School District transition to a K through 6 model for the 2016-17 school year, and that was seconded by you. I'm sorry, what?
Can I discuss it one more time? Okay. When I went to New Hampton, it was, I don't think it was K, we didn't have a kindergarten at the time, so we were in 6th grade. And then I transitioned over to the middle school at 7th grade, and we were all together in the middle school. And I remember walking the halls being really intimidated, running into, the older classmen. You looked up to them, you idolized them, you wanted to be like them. So 6th grade is probably the age where students make the biggest change hormonally